Hi guys. Hola. ¿Cómo está? Happy Mother's Day. If there's any mothers watching, happy Mother's Day. And today we're going to talk about lust and how it leads to destruction. And before we get into the message, let me first just say I am not conservative and I'm not prude and I'm not religious or uptight or anything like that. I'm actually really free spirited. In fact, everything that I'm about to preach is the complete opposite of how I used to be and how I used to think. And I suffered the consequences, which is why I'm sharing this message. So, lust is one of the seven deadly sins. And I don't think it's because, oh, if you're lustful, God is going to send you to hell. But really, the reason why it's one of the seven deadly sins is because it leads to self destruction and the destruction of others. And I know firsthand, and we're going to get into that a little bit later in the live. But yeah, if you see me looking down, I'm looking down at my notes. But sex is very spiritual. As much as people try to make it seem like, oh, sex is just sex, it's just something to feel pleasure. No. And there's two reasons why sex is not just sex and it's spiritual. Number one, you can create a whole human off that one act. How did we all get here? Unless you got here from like a surrogate or in vitro, I think that's what it's called. 9 times out of 10, you got here from two humans having sex. Number one, that lets you know how powerful it is and how spiritual it is. Another reason why sex is spiritual is because when you have sex with somebody, there's a chemical released called oxytocin. And this is the love chemical, which makes you a lot of times, that's why if you have sex with somebody a lot of times you will feel like you love them. Or at the very least, you'll have an attachment to them because anytime you have sex with that person, oxytocin is released, which is the love hormone. That's the love chemical. Those are the two reasons why sex is spiritual. And it shouldn't just be had with anybody, even if it's somebody you're attracted to, even if it's somebody you have chemistry with. Would you want to have a child with this person? And I know some people might be like, oh, that's extreme. No, it's not. Because, like I said, the true purpose of sex is procreation. So if you're laying down with somebody, especially without protection, you have to ask yourself, would I want to have a child with this person? If the answer is no, then why are you doing it? At the very least, you should use protection. And the only reason I'm preaching this is because, like I said, I've suffered the consequences of giving in to lust. When I was in my early 20s, I was promiscuous. I ain't gonna lie. But it wasn't even because I'm like, oh, I'm about to just have my way with these niggas and I'm about to just have my way and get my rocks off and have all these different guys. It wasn't even like that. Honestly, I would just, if I was attracted to somebody and we had chemistry and we vibed, I would be like, okay, let's do it. I don't care if it's only been a couple weeks, like, let's do it. I'm attracted, you attracted, we have chemistry, we vibe, we get along. Let's do it. But subconsciously, I didn't realize it at the time, but subconsciously, I was using sex to get love. I always associated sex with love. And part of the reason why probably is because I was exposed to sex at a very early age. When I was 3, I was molested by my father. And the crazy thing is, I I am a product of teenage parents. My mom and my dad were 15 when they had me. And like I said, when I was 3, I was molested by my father. And guess what? Both my mother and my father, they were exposed to sex at a very early age too. Things that a little kid should not be exposed to. Things that shouldn't be happening to a little kid. I don't really want to get into details because that's their business, but they both experienced that at a young age. Both my mother and my father were exposed to sex at a very early age, which is probably why they ended up having me when they were 15. Even teenagers can be lustful. And like I said, it's so deep, and that's why when people just try to downplay sex, like it's way deeper than people realize. It's so deeper than people realize. Because here's the thing: think about how many people are a product of two people being lustful, having sex, not because they were trying to have a child, but simply because they were they were lustful. They gave in to lust. And not only did they give in to lust, but they didn't use protection because it feels better doing it raw. So, how many of us were a product of that? How many of us can say our parents had us intentionally because they were in love and they were married? 9 times out of 10, most of us don't have that story. Two people Two people decided to lay down with each other without using protection, not thinking about the consequences, not thinking about the effect their actions could have on somebody else, which is that child that didn't ask to be born, that child that wasn't conceived from love, but from lust. That's why this shit is deep. And I'm sorry if I'm coming off very like, rare. But I'm just so passionate about it because I've suffered the consequences of me being lustful, and I've suffered the consequences of my parents being lustful. Because guess what? A lot of times you have two people hunching, not thinking about the consequences. Oops, now we have a baby. And guess what? A lot of times, those two people who were not fit to be parents end up passing trauma on to that innocent child. My parents passed on trauma to me. I was molested by my own father. And these are all the consequences of lust. That's why I say lust leads to self-destruction, and it leads to the destruction of others. Like I said, my parents' poor decisions, them giving in to lust, that I became a product of that. And all the trauma that they had, that they didn't heal from because they were too young. They were too young to even know that they needed to heal. And they were too young to even be having sex. If we want to be real, if you're 15, if me personally, and this is coming from somebody who I lost my virginity when I was 14. I was a freshman in high school. But now, me knowing what I know now, if you have teen at the end of your age, you should not be having sex. You are not ready to have sex because your mind is not fully developed. And a lot of times, the flesh is weak. The flesh is weak. And even if something feels good, if it's not good for your spirit, you have to fight off your flesh. You can't give into your flesh. No matter how good something feels, if it feels good to your flesh, but you know there are some consequences to it, and something in your spirit is telling you not to do it. You have to just deny your flesh. And this is coming from somebody who used to be very lustful and very promiscuous. But like I said, is because I was subconsciously using sex to get love. And I probably associated sex with love because I was molested by my own father when I was a toddler. Oh, give me a second, guys. I gotta look at my notes and I gotta take a sip of water. Hi, guys. What's your name? Kyla, aka Kai. Mm, Thank you for the happy Mother's Day, even though I'm not a mother yet. I don't have any kids, guys. But thank you. I'm sorry. Let me look at my notes. Oh, but yeah, like I was saying, back to what I was saying. When even let's say, and you might say, well, I use a condom, I use protection. Okay, even if you use protection, you are still that is still a soul tie. And the reason why it's a soul tie is because you're exchanging your energy with that person. Sex is an energy exchange. And even outside of that, you're sharing your life force with that person. Even if you use a condom, you're sharing your life force with that person because the act of having sex, that creates a whole human. Even if you have that barrier protecting you from pregnancy or STDs, you're still doing the act of creating a human. That's your life force. And you're sharing it with a person that you barely even know or that you don't really love. You might think you love them, but it's really just lust. Because guess what? If you take the sex away, if you take sex out of the equation, can you honestly say you love this person? Can you honestly say you love them as a person? And a lot of times we can't. We can't honestly say we love this person. If and I'm saying that because when I look back on all the relationships or situationships I was in, when I took sex out of the equation, when when I really thought to myself, okay, outside of the sex being amazing and us having a strong physical attraction, why do I love this person? And a lot of times I couldn't think of anything. I really just had an attachment to them because of the fact that we was constantly exchanging energy through sex. I lost my train of thought, guys. I'm sorry. Give me a second. uh, what was I saying? What was I saying? Oh my goodness. I'm looking at my notes, but I've been like kind of talking out of order from my notes. So I've just been like letting it come out. Um oh, what I was gonna say. Another consequence of giving into lust is a lot of times people get caught up with the wrong people. People get caught up in the wrong relationships because oh, I'm sorry. I can't listen to my train of thought. I'm so sorry, y'all. Bear with me. Give me grace on this beautiful Sunday. But yeah, what I was saying is a lot of times people get caught up in relationships they don't have no business being in because they had sex with that person. That's the thing. People be too eager to jump in bed with somebody. Get to know that person first. As cliche and old school as it might sound, before you hop into bed with this person, before you get physical, even when it comes to touching and kissing, you have to be careful with that. If you're doing everything but sex, if you're doing everything outside of sex, y'all touching each other's private parts, French kissing, feeling all on each other. Not saying you can't do that. You can do what you want. Do what you want. I'm just saying you even got to be careful with that because that produces oxytocin too because it's skin to skin contact. And all these things can give you a false sense of closeness to that person and make you think you love them when you barely even know them. So, if you want to determine if you really love somebody and if they really love you and if y'all really have a connection, take sex out of the equation. And this is coming from somebody who used like even the thought of being abstinent and waiting until marriage. I was like, hell nah, I'm not doing that. I gotta have me some. I got my needs. Like how I used to be, I never thought I would be abstinent. And I've been abstinent for almost 3 years. But it's because I just know too much now. I know better. And like I said, I've suffered the consequences. When I was in my early 20s, I got an STD. I got chlamydia. Thankfully, I got something you can get rid of, and it wasn't like HIV or like herpes or anything like that. When I was in my early 20s, no, actually, when I was 18, I got chlamydia. And even in my early 20s, I got pregnant, had an abortion. So, like I said, I've suffered the consequences. Even times I've used protection. Even after I had sex with a guy and we used protection, when I woke up the next morning, I felt anxious. I would always feel this anxiety like, okay, what's next? I literally gave this man all of me. Like literally you and that's why I don't understand how people downplay having, sex or whatever because you're literally giving somebody your body. You're in most cases you're butt naked. They literally get to see all of you. Not only do they get to see it, but they get to be inside of it, or you're letting them inside, whatever, whether you're a man or a woman. I'm not trying to be graphic or vulgar, but I just gotta be real and I'm not gonna censor myself. Even if YouTube like flags this video or whatever, I don't care because this is raw and uncut. Like I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, and I'm not gonna walk on eggshells or censor myself. And if you ain't grown, you shouldn't be watching this in the first place. Or you know what? Maybe you should. Maybe you should because you can know ahead of time and not make some of the mistakes I've made and some of the mistakes of other adults that are watching the video right now. But anyways, like I said, I'm gonna just be raw and uncut. I'm not gonna censor myself. But you're giving somebody the most sacred part of you. Like that's the furthest you can go with a person. So I feel like you just have to be careful. You have to be careful. You should not take it lightly. Even you have to even be careful of the music you listening to and even watching porn. Not trying to make anybody feel guilty. Like I just have to be real. And I'm not saying this from a place of judgment. I'm speaking from experience. When I used to watch porn every single day, sometimes twice a day, even the music that I would listen to was very sexual. And this only amplified my feelings of lust. And a lot of times it would give me a false sense of closeness to a guy that I was talking to, especially if we had sex. I wouldn't say like, "Oh, I love him," but subconsciously I would feel like I did. I would feel this closeness to him. Even though, like I said, if you took sex out of the equation, there was not really much I could say about the man. And I'm not talking about a specific man, I'm talking about like all the guys I dealt with in the past. And even when it comes to getting in toxic relationships and situationships, most relationships and situationships wouldn't even happen in the first place if people took sex out of the equation. If people took their time having sex with a person, not rushing into it, but actually just getting to know that person. A lot of times you'll discover, oh, this person isn't really right for me. Me and this person don't match. Me and this person don't fit. And then you would move on. But no, a lot of times people bring sex into the equation early on. And that's what causes, not even just causes, but that's what draws out these long, toxic relationships and situationships. I know because I've been in them, especially my last relationship. That that was the finest man I ever been with. Even though he was crazy as hell, I gotta be real and say that was the strongest attraction I've ever had to any man I've ever dated. I was so attracted to him. And really, I just really I felt a very strong lust towards him because he was everything I ever wanted on a superficial level. He had the six pack, muscles, perfect teeth, dimples in his cheek, high bone structure, perfect eyebrows, perfect eyelashes. The man was fine. I gotta give him his credit. He was fine. But guess what? He was the craziest man I ever dealt with. Most, like, that was the sickest person I've ever dealt with. And I'm not trying to demonize him. I'm just being honest. That was the craziest relationship I've ever been in. He treated me worse than anybody I've ever been with. And guess what? That was the longest relationship I ever been in too. Even though it was the worst, it was the longest relationship I ever been in too. And guess what? Lust played a big part in that. Other than me having low self-esteem, not loving myself, and not really knowing God, having like childhood trauma and needing to heal and all those things. Outside of all those things, lust played a really strong part in that too. Because, like I said, the man was fine. I was so attracted to him. I had such a strong sexual desire for him. And guess what? I paid for it. I paid for it. The being I was with him for almost 4 years. And those near 4 years, it was a living hell. I would say 20% of it was heaven, but the other 80% was absolute hell. That man made my life a living hell. So really, all the things that I'm saying, I'm really just trying to warn you. If you haven't already went through all the things that I'm saying, here is a warning. Here is a cautionary tale about why it's so important not to give in to lust. Really, all the seven deadly sins you should try to stay away from, but especially lust. Just think about all the baby dad and baby mamas you see that hate each other, that are so dysfunctional. That is a product of lust. Those, whenever you see a baby mom and a baby dad that hate each other, a lot of times it's because the relationship was based on lust, or it started off with lust. A lot of times those people never loved each other. They just had a strong, lustful desire for each other. And that's why I say lust leads to destruction. It either leads to your self destruction or it leads to the destruction of innocent children who didn't ask to be here, who didn't ask to be born. And a lot of times, who didn't even, the parents didn't even want them in the first place. Let's just be real. So, yeah, I say all that to say do what you want. Do what you want. If you're an adult, do what you want. But in my humble opinion, I think you should take sex off the table. When you first start getting to know a person, take sex off the table. Take sex out of the equation. And if you can, try not to be super physical with that person at all until you really get to know them. Because when you take sex out of the equation, that helps you that that helps you have better judgment so you can be able to properly assess whether or not this person is for you. So, yeah, that is all I have to say, guys. I'm sorry for yelling. Maybe I wasn't yelling. I just feel like I'd be like, ah, because I just have so much to say and I just have so much passion and so much energy. But yeah, I love you guys. If this message spoke to you, please make sure you like it. Make sure you're subscribed. I'm losing my voice. This always happens when I get towards the end. Mm. Like I was saying, if this message spoke to you, please make sure you like it. Make sure you're subscribed. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye.